All right, my friends, I want you to find the next available page in your reading response notebook. Wherever you are in your note-taking is fine. Your next available page. And let's go ahead and slap the date on there, which is 9/24. Because today, this is what we're going to be focusing on, and I want you to copy that down in your response notebook. I hold on to my best thinking. And I just realized best, it doesn't look real clear there, so I'm going to fix that for you. I hold on to my best thinking. Okay, guys, so we've been talking a lot since school started 3.5 weeks ago about ways that we respond to text. We've reviewed all of those strategies that you know about making connections and predictions and asking questions and doing all that sort of thing. We've been talking about using sticky notes to hold on to our thinking. We've been talking about how we use our response notebooks, and we've been practicing some of that work. And some of you have noticed when I read aloud to you that I've got lots of sticky notes going in our read aloud book. And the other day somebody said, "What are you writing?" And I said, "I will tell you later. The time has come." So I started to think about this lesson. I hold on to my best thinking, and I started looking at my thinking, because sometimes when I read to you guys, I grab a sticky note and I just scribble on it a little bit. So I'm going to show you what some of that looks like. So I had a couple sticky notes, and this was one of them. It was just a capital I for inference, and I drew an arrow to where my inference was on the page. And then I scribbled just a couple words on there so that I would remember when I went back to it. And so this particular sticky note was, remember when Mary Alice came to dinner after the mouse thing with the milk, and she pushed her food around her plate? And so my inference was she wasn't hungry because she was still grossed out about the mouse. And so that was pretty good thinking, whereas Grandma ate really hearty, and so didn't bother her in the slightest. And that tells me something about Mary Alice, and that tells me something about Grandma, but it wasn't my best thinking. So this wasn't the piece that I chose to hold on to. So after this lesson today, I'm actually going to put this inference in the recycle bin, because it's not my best thinking. What I want to share with you today are a couple other stickies that I made that I felt were my best thinking, and what it looks like when I take that sticky note and then transfer that to paper. So I'm going to show you mine, and then you're going to practice with a neighbor. So here we go. So here's the actual sticky that I did. It was one Post-it that took place over 2 pages, and I decided to be good steward of my sticky notes, and if I can use one sticky for 2 thoughts, I'll do it. So I had a C, which means connection, and my connection there was to my mom and chores. And I decided to write long about that because this connection really helps me understand Grandma's character a little bit better. And so what I wrote was, I can connect to Grandma making the kids do chores if they hung around the house. My mom would do this. This makes me think Grandma is like my mom in some ways. She works hard and made us work hard too. So that for me is some really good thinking, because it helps me understand that character better. And so I wanted to hold on to that piece. And then the next piece that I jotted here was this great big I. Again, I made an inference. Remember when Joey was out in the field and he was pulling weeds, and he was talking about the onions, and they were making his eyes water, and he was thinking about the Cowgill brothers and worrying about them, and then he heard Mary Alice scream. And it talks about how he jumped the garden rows and ran for the house because he thought it was the Cowgill brothers. And that to me was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And so this was my thinking about that. When Joey ran from the garden to the house when he thought Mary Alice was in trouble, I thought he was brave and loving. He was brave because he thought the Cowgill boys were there, and he was afraid of them, but he was still going to help his sister. I should have written that part, I'll have to add that. He was loving because he was going to help his sister. So he was brave and loving in that moment. And that was my best thinking. So what I want to show you now are some actual sticky notes from one of our friends in the other class who gave me her permission to use them. I was looking through your response notebooks over the weekend, and I saw these, and I thought, I can use those to teach. And so I asked, and I said, can I use these sticky notes to teach a lesson? And she's like, yeah, sure, I don't care. So what I want you to do right now is I'm going to read you these 3 stickies. These are her actual stickies, but I wrote them larger. Sorry, Kate, you probably can't see very well. So that you could see them. And I want you in a moment, not just yet, to turn and talk about which of these do you think would allow you, if this was your sticky, to really hold on to your best thinking? One Post-it said, that's funny. This one says, I don't like this guy. And this one has a question mark, meaning this is her question, and she wrote, where did he go? So I want you to turn and talk about which one of those do you think would help you as a reader hold on to your best thinking. Go ahead.
It's just like in general.
Okay, friends, bring your conversations to a close in 3, 2, 1. I love the different thinking that I heard. Pretty much everybody that I listened in on said that that's funny, probably not the thinking you want to hold on to, and I would totally agree with you. It was interesting to listen to your conversations because somebody said, well, this could be a really right there question, but then it could be a little bit deeper. But the most agreement that I heard kind of went with what I was thinking as a reader was this piece that I don't like this guy. And someone said, because I know the next thing they're going to say is our magic word, because. And that's going to really help you dig deeper into your thinking about that character and your understanding about that character. And so today I wanted you to practice that because you're going to go back and you're going to do your independent reading. You're going to be responding to reading in the ways that make sense to you. Some of you like to sketch. Many of you are really into making connections or writing questions or doing those inferences and those predictions. You know, predictions are a type of inference. But what I want you to do at the end is hold on to your best thinking. And so we just practiced a little bit about how we do that. And that's what you're going to do today. You're going to read and respond like you always do. And then at the end, we're going to start to make those critical decisions about how we hold on to our best thinking. And then we're going to share with our partners like we always do. All right, readers, QQ, back, and let's begin our workshop reading time. I'm going to go ahead and put the quiet music on just because we're used to having that. I think all the teachers are being intentionally very quiet for us today, but we're used to having that background. If it's too loud, you can turn it down. That's where it was. Oh, that's loud. So you're having an inference about him not liking to be there. Okay. One thing I want you to think about is, could you put a big I on that paper and a couple keywords? No, don't erase, you're fine. So put a big I that you have an inference. And then what would be a couple keywords that you could put on there to help you remember this thought? His name. Yeah, that's one thing that you just told me. Readers, I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. I find myself, I love that some people are so into their reading that they're not with me. Sadie, can you give me your attention for just a second? Thank you, darling. I love that you get so into your books. I used to do the same thing. I wouldn't hear my mom or the teacher or anybody. I find myself having the same conversation with kids over and over again today, so I wanted to share it with everybody. Once I have it about 4 times, I figure it's worth interrupting you to share this. And what I want to share with you is that a lot of you are still doing that, writing full sentences on your Post-it note thing. And it will save you time as a reader, and it will allow you to spend more time with these fabulous stories if you can just jot a few keywords. So think about how I jotted with Joey, fence, running. That helped me know, oh yeah, he jumped the fence and ran to the kitchen to help Mary Alice. So if you can think about your jots, instead of writing, the girl was going to the circus, think about the keywords. Who's important there? The girl. What's important about where she's going? Circus. So if you can think about just honing in on those key words that will help you remember your thought, that will help you save time. It's a quick jot, and then you're right back into your story, rather than taking the time to write out that full long thought, because we always do that later. And writing those key words will also help us sort our jots a little bit quicker when we're holding on to our best thinking. Okay, back to it. Is this feeling just right? Or is it feeling like a book that maybe would be better in the spring? Better in the spring. I love that. I love that you know that and you're willing to make that decision. That's awesome. I would agree with you. And I was a little worried about it, but I'm really glad that you can make that choice. Do you have another book on deck? No. Okay. Would it be all right with you if just for today I just really quickly gave you a book that I think will be more just right and that you will like, and we can maybe take a look at it together? Okay, hang on a second. I'll grab you a book. Okay, is this your personal book? Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. So, are you familiar with Patricia McLaughlin? Phenomenal writer. Love, love, love her writing. So these are actually two of her books. You ever heard of this book? This is Sarah Blaine's Top. This was the first book I was going for. Then I thought of this book, which I read myself last year. So, I'm going to read the back. Why don't you read the back? Let's see how that goes. Just whisper read.
Here's the dog. Here's the dog. Here's something. Going to live forever. Even when we like it, sick chicks fast. Everything will go on as always. But there's one thing that wants to explode. So that house chicken. This is a special thing.
Okay, and that's just true. We'll put out the other there. So I know this will be a just right text for you. I think that you'll like it. And it'll probably be a nice read for you. She's a really good author. Okay. Do you have grandmas and grandpas? Yes. So right away you have a way to connect with this text because you understand what it's like to have grandparents. Do you get to see your grandparents very often? You're so lucky. Okay, so you've got instant connection with this text, which is really going to make it an easier read for you. So will you give this one a go? Okay, I think you'll like that one a little bit better than this one. So give that a go. Have your sticky notes ready, and just see what kind of thinking you can come up with in the next 10 minutes. All right, way to go, babe. I'm so happy you made that decision. I'm proud of you. You seen that before? Okay, it just pinged into my head. This word kindred means they're like the same. So if somebody is a kindred spirit, it means, that's the term that you'll most often hear, it means that you're very much alike. And so in this case, kindred souls, who would you guess in the book are kindred souls?
Grandparents are Jake and
Jake and his grandpa. So even though they're very, very far apart in age, they have a lot of things alike. They think the same way. They like the same things. So I wanted to make sure that you knew what that word meant. And of course, soul was sort of talking about your spirit. You know, it's kind of like Mrs. Campbell and I are so much alike. We're like kindred spirits. Makes sense? Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. So remember, one thing that I want you to hold on to today is when you, if your best thinking is that wonder, remember how we talked about trying to answer your own wonders, to deepen your own thinking. So you hang on to that. All right, my friends, believe it or not, the time has come for you to wrap up where you are, analyze, which means to look at very carefully, all of the jotting that you've done today, and choose which piece or pieces, because you know I did show you two, but maybe even just that one piece of what's your best thinking for today. And take a moment to write about that in your response notebook. So look at the jots that you've got on your Post-its, choose your best thinking, and take a couple minutes to write long about that. Remember to try to use our magic word. Because. We know when we use because, it uncovers much more of our thinking. So we're not going to have conversations yet. I'll let you know when that time is here. I want you to take about 3 minutes to just write long and capture a lot about your best thinking. So what does it make you think about him? Instead of telling me, I want you to write it. This makes me think that he. So remember, we can use those prompts to help us push our thinking even more.
My dad for taking an apartment. Went to the bookstore because my goal was and that makes me think that Michael is a jerk and only cares about because he wants his brother to quit and he wants everyone to pass.
Give me a thumbs up if both partners have had the opportunity to share in your group. All right, excellent. I'd like you to, social studies word, migrate back to your seats, and we're going to wrap up a little bit. All right, my friends, I want to commend you for the first time really trying to sort through your notes and just hold on to your best thinking. You did a great job. You really thought long and hard about which post-its that you were going to use, which bits of thinking that you were going to hold on to. I noticed in conversation we're still getting used to not summarizing our text and just talking about our thinking. And again, you'll get used to that. We're just 3.5 weeks into school, so we will get used to just diving in and talking about our thinking. Sometimes we do need to do that 1 to 2 sentence summary. I wanted to highlight a couple things that I saw. That was, somebody was asking a question, and then remember how we talked about trying to answer our own questions to deepen our thinking. And can you pull out your notebook for me?
What?
Pull out your notebook. I want to read, because I don't want to misspeak what you said. So when Savannah was working on her response, she's reading The Giver. And this is a little interesting piece that I want to share with you for today. She's seen the movie. And of course, my immediate response was, oh no, you saw the movie first. But I told Savannah, this is an opportunity for you to really think critically. Why is the book different? Why is the movie different? And how we talked about earlier, sometimes our best thinking comes when we answer our own question, or we try to answer our own question, even if we don't really know the answer. And so her question was that, questioning why they have to live the way that they live in the text, and I'm not going to go into all of that. But I love her answer. She said, well, I don't really know. I'm sort of wondering about that. And I said, well, what would you say if you tried to answer it? And her answer was that they want peace. So they take away anger and hate and love in an attempt to have peace. And I thought, ooh, that's really interesting. And that could really cause us to have a great conversation. Her partner might say, what makes you say that? What else did you notice? Tell me more about that. All of our prompts would fit with that. And so as we continue to move forward, holding on to our best thinking from our connections, from our questions, from our inferences, let's just keep an eye toward what's my best thinking for the day and how can I continue to deepen that as a reader. Beautiful job, you guys. Go ahead and take out your writer's notebooks, please.
So you remember that we started today by really thinking about walking into this classroom and digging into what did we see in this culture that would lead us to believe that learning was taking place. We wanted to dig into deep thinking and answer this question about what does it feel like to be a learner in this environment. And so for about the next 45, 50 minutes, I want to give you time to look through the notes that you have. I want you to have time to engage in some conversation with your thinking and talking and learning friends about what you saw. And as you're speaking, with your permission, I'd like to come and listen in on your conversations, perhaps share with you some resources that might be helpful to move your conversation along. And then at the end of our thinking and talking time, I'm going to ask you to share your thinking. So just have that in the back of your head that at about 3:10, you're going to be sharing in a jigsaw kind of way the conversation that you've had among your colleagues with the rest of the group. So I've got some tools that you might use when you come to that point. You might use some big sticky notes. We've got all kinds of chart paper. You have markers at your table. You might want to make some sort of visual representation of your thinking. Perhaps it's just best for your group to share your thinking in an audible way, make your thinking audible. However best, whether it's through a thinking routine or some other way for you to share the conversation that's gone on at your tables. Is there anything that you need clarification from me with regard to the work that you're going to be doing this afternoon and the learning that's going to happen?
Engaging to me are effective are the ones where they do pull in those pieces of themselves or their families, or listen to Nate Fuller talk about his kids with his students and how excited they get.
Right. That Mary Helen emotional learning connection piece that we've been hearing so often.
Yeah. The teaching point?
The best thinking. Then she referred to the word because, that's their magic word, which again forces this deeper thinking. So I like that.
Well, the modeling and demonstration point was what you were just referring to, I think. Sharing the Post-its, the sticky notes from a student that she made clear she got permission from, so that...
What about that kid that can just go through there and just keep wrestling with that? And, I hold on to my best thinking. Well, can it be held on to here, or does it have to be?
Yeah. And I noticed, I walked in the room kind of one of the first people, and her routines and procedures are down so well. Like she said, QQ and come to the carpet. And she's delivering the teaching point at the beginning of the connection, just saying like, it's written up here on here, we're gonna talk about it, and then she's like in the connection and doing this stuff, and you could tell because that's how she has routines and things going with her kids that they were able to follow her. I was wondering if the people that were walking in behind me were picking up with it because it was so efficiently done.
Yeah.
I have something
So as I'm
profound to say,
listening in on your conversations, I'm hearing some things that lead me to believe that some of you are noticing some connections between our work with workshop, reading workshop, writing workshop, and our overarching goal of Clarkston and what we want our kids to leave feeling like, and that's that they see themselves as thinkers and learners. And so the piece that I'm going to add to your thinking today are some pieces of paper that you've certainly seen before. I'm going to ask you to think about the 8 cultural forces. And how did what you see today fit into this model? I'm also going to give you the 6 principles of the Cultures of Thinking project, an understanding map that's a visual map. These icons were actually developed by some children to go along with the understanding map. And then finally, because we didn't see any thinking routines per se today, we heard lots of thinking, but we didn't see a See, Think, Wonder, we didn't see a Connect, Extend, Challenge. Those routines were not part of today's lesson. So another piece that I'd like you to consider today is this definition of what is a thinking routine from Ron Richart. And on the back of that are some thoughts on thinking dispositions. So throw these pieces of paper into the mix of your conversation, and let's see if we can begin to dig into what was this culture, not only in terms of helping kids learn to read and write, but to develop their thinking and to be the deep kind of thinkers and learners that we want them to leave our schools feeling that they are. Who wants to be next?
Thanks. Our center base was Phyllis's comment back here. What does it feel like to be a learner in this environment? So we went at it from 4 different perspectives. High expectations. Obviously, to be a learner in that or my environment, it values thinking and learning or the completion of task or compliance. It's not so much about, I'll just get this done and turn it in and I can go on to something else. That's not an option in her classroom. Routines and procedures, obviously we saw huge evidence of a lot of rehearsal and of routines and things.
I apologize, we don't have a visual because we were talking so much about what we were talking about. So if you can bear with me and kind of picture this in your mind, because as we were talking, we thought, we started out, when we look at the understanding map, just kind of describing what's there. So those were kind of like the seeds of the classroom of what we were noticing, and we naturally brought in the cultural forces that were at play in the classroom, perhaps naming it, perhaps not naming it until later to recognize that the time, the opportunities, the strong relationships that those kids were having with one another, that was evident in what that was as a classroom as we went into reading workshop. We then were starting to make some wonderings about that, and so it was kind of growing up into that trunk. All right, what are some things that we're wondering about as we think about how Beth interacted with her students, how she was using that with her classroom? Then we started to branch out and made some connections to our own reading and thinking of how we acted as readers. You know, we don't recall sitting in the classroom and sitting there reading for 30-some minutes when we were in school, that we were making some of those connections, as well as then we started to think, how natural is it to jot? This is difficult. This isn't something that we naturally do. So then we were having some conversations and considering a different viewpoint of what does that really do? What, as a reader, how does that engage you as a thinker? And so how do we do that work? And so we got to this point of being able to truly capture the heart of what it is when you're in a reading workshop setting, to really be jotting and thinking about that helps us to connect that the dispositions we want for our students, that happens when they're actually jotting. Because if I'm just reading for information, I'm not engaging in that, and I'm not giving myself the opportunity to really think about what I'm reading. And so it may be difficult for us, especially now as readers, and so Phyllis actually encouraged us to say, do that as a reader. What might that be like, so that when you're talking with your friends or you're talking for the book club, if that's who you're with, you have something there. So we just kind of started with some seeds and tried to grow, and so those are some of the things that we noticed that we just naturally worked through our thinking, understanding map, and started to grow.